I'm Alexa Gilman,
And I'm James Roberts.
and we're going to talk about how to create a public load balancer to load balance virtual machines using the Azure portal. We're going to be following a quick start tutorial by Microsoft. Okay, so getting started with Azure Load Balancer, we're using the Azure portal to create a public load balancer for a backend pool with 2 virtual machines. In the tutorial, there's some additional resources, including the Azure Bastion, NAT Gateway, a virtual network, and some required subnets. To get started, you have to create an Azure account with an active subscription. So I've already signed into Azure, and the first step is to create an NAT gateway. So in the search bar, you're going to search NAT gateway and hit create. Okay, you're going to choose your subscription, and then in the resource group, you're going to create a new resource and title it load-balancer-RG. Hit OK. And then you are going to name your NAT gateway LB NAT gateway. And then you choose your region, which is East US, and leave the availability zone as known. And the idle timeout needs to be changed to 15 minutes. Next, you're going to choose outbound IP. And under IP address, you're going to create a new public IP address. You're going to name that NAT-GW-public IP. And then you're going to hit OK. And then you're going to select the review and create. And review your information and then just create the NAT gateway.
Our deployment was complete for the NAT gateway, and now we're going to create a virtual network and Bastion host. The following steps, we will create a virtual network with a resource subnet and an Azure Bastion subnet and Azure Bastion host. So in the portal search bar, we'll type in virtual networks. Then we'll click on that virtual networks page, and then we'll click create. On the basics tab, we'll enter the following information. In the resource group, we have load balancer RG in the name. For our virtual network name, we'll do LB-VNet. And we're in the Eastern US. Now we'll click the security tab. So in the security tab, we will click the checkbox on Enable Azure Bastion. We'll enter the host name, LB Bastion. And yep, there's our public IP address as well. So now we need to go to the IP addresses tab. So we'll create the default here. Once we click on that, open up a new tab, and we can leave the subnet purpose as default, and we can put our name as backend subnet. I think we can leave everything else pretty much the same. Then if we scroll down to the bottom, we should see NAT gateway. We just created one of those. We can select it. Now we can click save. And now review and create. Look at our information. Looks pretty good. Now let's click create. And now our deployment is in progress, and it should, after a little bit, create our thing.
Okay, now our virtual host and Bastion have been deployed, so the next step is to create a load balancer. So back in the search bar, we're going to search load balancer. Now in this step, we're creating a zone redundant load balancer that load balances virtual machines. With zone redundancy, one or more availability zones can fail and the data path survives as long as one zone in the region remains healthy. During the creation of this load balancer, we'll configure a front-end IP address, a back-end pool, an inbound load balancing rules, and a health probe. Okay, so now once we're at the load balancer page, we're going to hit create, and we're going to go to the basics tab, and in this tab, we are going to select our subscription, which we've already done. We're going to select our existing load balancer. We're going to name it load-balancer. Our region is East US, and then we're going to leave the default as standard. We're going to make the type public, and we're going to leave the default regional tier. And next, we're going to choose the front-end IP configuration. Okay, here we're going to add a front-end IP configuration. We're going to name that LB-frontend. And then we're going to select IPv4, which has already been done, and then select IP address for the type. And then we're going to create a new public IP address, and we're going to name that LB-frontend-IP. And then we're going to select OK. So we leave it zone redundant, and we leave the default for Microsoft Network. Okay, and then we're going to add that. And then we're going to go next to the backend pools. Okay, here we're going to add a backend pool. We're going to name that LB/backend/pool. And then for our virtual network, we're going to choose the network we created earlier. Then we're going to select IP address for the backend pool configuration. And we're going to save. Next, we're going to go to inbound rules. Okay, here under the load balancing rule and inbound rules tab, we're going to select add a load balancing rule. And here we're going to name it LB/HTTP/rule. Then we're going to leave it IPv4. And then for front-end IP address, we're going to name it LB. There we go. And then for the backend pool, we're going to select that one. And then for protocol, we're going to leave it TCP. For port, we're going to make it 80. And for backend port, we're also going to make it 80. Maybe. Okay. And then for health probe, we're going to create a new health probe. We're going to name it LB/health/probe. And select HTTP protocol. We are going to leave the rest of the defaults and hit save. Okay, for session persistence, we're going to leave it as none. We're going to make the idle timeout 15 minutes. And then we're going to enable TCP reset and leave enable floating IP unchecked. And then for outbound source network address translation, we're going to leave that as the recommended default and select save. Next, we're going to select review and create. We're going to review all of our information, and we're going to create our load balancer. Now our deployment's in progress and should be complete soon.
Okay, now we're going to create two virtual machines in two different zones. And these virtual machines are added to the backend pool of the load balancer that was created earlier. So in the search bar, we'll look up virtual machines, click virtual machines here. Then we're going to click on create and then Azure virtual machine. We have our subscription. We're going to click our resource group, our load balancer RG. Now we're going to name the virtual machine. We're going to name it LB-VM1. Our region's East US. Availability zone, we'll keep it at that. We're in zone 1. And our security type, we will click standard. Now for our image, we want to click Ubuntu Server 22.04 LTS. We got that. Now we'll leave VM architecture, leave that. Our size, I'll just leave it as the default. Enable hibernation, we'll leave that. administrator account, we will click password and we'll make our username Lexi_James. I'll make a super secret password. And I need to confirm that password. Boom, and it liked both of those. And then for public inbound ports, we'll select none. So now we can click next on this, go to networking. And now for our virtual network, we have LBVNet, our backend subnet, keep that. Our public IP will keep as none. For NIC network security group, we'll click advanced. Now to configure this, we will skip this step until the rest of the settings are complete, and then we'll go back to this. So delete NIC when VM is selected. We'll keep that unselected. We'll keep this as the default. Now for load balancing, we'll click Azure Load Balancer. Now select a load balancer. We'll click our load balancer right there. And then select our backend pool. That'll be backend pool. Now we can go back up to here. For our configure network security group, we'll click create new. We will name this LB-NSG for load balancer network security group. I'll name it 1. Actually, it looks like I'll name it 2. Okay. So now I will click add an inbound rule here. For service, I'll click HTTP. Under priority, I'll click 100. And for the name, LB-NSG-rule. Click add. Click OK. Now, review and create. Looks like it liked it. So all of our stuff looks pretty good. Now we'll click create. And after a bit, our deployment will be successful for our virtual machine. And then we will create, I'm going to do this off camera to save some time on the video, but you'll do the exact same thing, but name it, create another one, name it load balancer VM2. And instead of zone 1, you'll put it in zone 2. And then for the network security group, you'll select the one we just made, LB-NSG.
All right, now we have both of our virtual machines, as you can see here. And the next step is to configure the servers. So we'll start by opening our first virtual machine, and then we'll select connect via Bastion. We'll enter our username and password and select connect. This should open a terminal, and the first step is to enter sudo apt/get update to update our virtual machine. This might take a second. Okay, and then we're going to clear just to clean it up a bit. And then the next step is to enter sudo apt/get install Apache 2. All right, we're going to select Y to continue. Okay, now we're going to go back to our first virtual machine, and we're going to copy the public IP address. Okay, and then we're going to open a new incognito window and paste that. Then it's going to open an Ubuntu page. Okay, so as we see here, we should replace the file with our own information. So we're going to go back to the terminal, and we're going to change the directory. So we're going to type in cd /vir /www/html, and then we're going to enter ls just to see that new index. Okay, now we are ready to remove that file. So you'll type sudo rm index.html. All right, we're gonna hit ls and the file's gone now. So we're gonna create our new index file. So we're gonna type sudo nano index.html. And in this file, we can write HTML body h1 open to CS 473 server 1. Excellent. Close that. Close the body and close the HTML. All right, now we'll save the file. And if we go back to our original web page and we reload it, it shows our new created HTML file. So we need to do the same thing for our second virtual machine, but I'll spare you guys the time and do that off screen.
So we have just created our second server / virtual machine, and we're now going to test our load balancer by connecting to the servers. So we will go to the search bar and type in public IP addresses. We'll click that. Now we'll select front-end IP. Now we'll copy the IP address shown. We'll now open a new incognito window and paste in the IP address. As we can see, it connects to one of our servers. If we keep clicking refresh, the load balancer should automatically redirect you to another server after a bit. As we can see, after refreshing for a little while, it automatically directed us to another server. So we can also manually direct server traffic with our load balancer. We're going to open back up. We're going to search virtual machines, and we'll select our virtual machine. Let's look back at our incognito window to see what server is open right now. So we have server 2. So we're going to actually close server 2 so it only connects to server 1. So we press stop on our virtual machine to shut off the virtual machine. So our virtual machine is stopped, and now we can go back to our incognito page with our IP address on it. So now we press refresh, and we can see that it only connects to the server that is active right now, which is server 1.
In our presentation, we introduced Microsoft Azure and talked about what an Azure load balancer is. Additionally, we discussed how it works and when to use it. The tutorial created an NAT gateway, a virtual network, bastion host, the actual load balancer itself, and virtual machines. In this tutorial, we used some of the key components we talked about in our presentation. Within the load balancer, we configured a front-end IP, a back-end pool, a health probe, and added an inbound NAT rule and outbound rule. In conclusion, in this video, we have shown how to create a public load balancer using the Azure portal. This tutorial shows how to create a load balancer and use it to direct traffic between two virtual machine servers.